Oh man, here it goes. Let's make sure everything's up. I gotta wait. I gotta wait because it's just me. I know it's kind of yeah. I have to make sure everything's live because I don't have an on-site producer, and I know that's frustrating. I apologize. All right, okay, we're up on the Rockfin and YouTube. Ooh, Rockfin won. Rockfin what? Rockfin beat YouTube today. You guys know I don't like YouTube very much. Not the people on YouTube. The people on YouTube are great. But YouTube, the platform, not a big fan. So YouTube was not victorious over Rockfin today. It's always a race for second, by the way. Twitter is always first. Twitter is just right away. Twitter's like, boom, we're here. And then YouTube and Rockfin are in a race for second. And Rockfin won today. YouTube came in third place out of 3. How's that feel? Boom. What's up, everybody? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, happy future. And of course, to everyone listening to the podcast later, hope everything is going well, whether you're running errands, whatever it is you're doing. Welcome to Get Your News On with Ron, the headline show for the week. And we are going to be dabbling in 2 of the spaces that we spend a lot of time in: digital rights and labor. Those are 2 those are 2 of the biggest. I feel like if I had to rank them, I'd say digital rights, labor, and climate change. Those are the main things we talk about on this show. I guess because I think that's really freaking important. But as you are probably already aware, antitrust summer is still going on, and I am still really dedicating a lot of time and energy to this because we actually have a chance at doing this crazy, crazy thing that, especially to people on the left, is a very, very foreign feeling. This is something that hardly ever happens, has not happened on a wide scale for arguably about 100 years. And when it does happen or anything close to it, honestly, most of us don't even know how to react here in the United States. We're not even sure how to process it. Here's that crazy thing we have a chance at doing. You ready for this? Winning. We have a chance at winning something. For a change, we might have a chance. So let's go through it real quick for anyone who might not already be in the know, although I'm sure you probably are at this point if you follow this show intensely. There are 2 antitrust bills going on in Congress right now. They are OMA and ACOA. OMA is I still need to Open Apps Market Act. ACOA is the American Innovation and Choice Online Act. Still haven't memorized the all the words in there, but OMA and ACOA. That's how I always just do the short version. But here's what these bills do. Okay, these bills are in the digital rights space. What OMA does right now in the App Store, Apple and Google have pretty much a monopoly. They get to decide what apps are in there, what apps aren't. They charge these exorbitant fees just to get in there. They charge these high commission rates just to be in there. And software may or may not work. This bill levels the playing field for alternative apps, and it allows you, the user, to decide what software does or doesn't work on your device the way it should be. So it makes it easier for independent and alternative apps to compete. And this might be better for things like encryption, for things like privacy, for things like, new innovative ways to do things. Think about alternative car sharing apps that treat workers right, unlike Lyft or Uber. It makes it easier for those kind of things to happen because it breaks up the near monopoly that Apple and Google have. We're going to get to Amazon in a second here. The second bill going on, ACOA. What does that do? So when you search for something, and particularly on Amazon or Google, which is where most searching takes place, pretty much 90% of all online searches happen on Google. Most online commerce happens on Amazon. I think it's at least 50%. So out of every 2 things purchased online, at least one of them is coming right from Amazon. So they own the marketplace pretty much. What Amazon does is they will list their products and services above everything else. And what they do is they'll make generics of other things. And how do they know what generics to make? Well, they harvest your data so they know what you like and they know what people are buying. An example that was on the John Oliver segment about these two bills, which, by the way, I do got to say, I recommend that segment. I don't agree with everything I've ever seen on the John Oliver show. I definitely have some differences from some of the stuff they've done on that show. Some differences when it comes to foreign policy, some difference when it comes to third parties. But for whatever reason, when it comes to digital rights, that show nails it. They nailed it on net neutrality and they nailed it on this one. So I do recommend that segment. But an example that they highlighted, so there's a designer bag that a bunch of people like. It's a bag that a bunch of people are buying. It's made by recycled materials. There's years of research and development that went into designing it. Amazon will make a knockoff of that bag, sell it for cheaper, and list all their results first above everything else. So it screws over basically all the vendors online. Google will scrape information from other websites, compile it into their own content, list it first on search results, not put the source material until the second or third page, which, if you're on the second or third page, let's be honest, no one's going there. You might as well not even be on the internet pretty much. And then those websites don't get the traffic. So that's what these platforms do. This bill makes them stop doing that. This bill says you can't do that anymore. This is important antitrust legislation that has bipartisan support. There's people across the political spectrum that support this stuff because we all agree that big tech has way too much freaking power. Here's the deal, though. It's up to Chuck Schumer to bring this to a vote. Now, Chuck Schumer has a daughter who's a lobbyist at Amazon, has another daughter who works with Meta, the company that's Facebook. That's the big tech lobby. Guess who's really rallying against these bills? The big tech lobby. They are spending millions of dollars to try to stop these bills. And they're making all kinds of nonsense about it. They're saying, oh, well, if you pass these bills, we won't be able to offer you Amazon Prime anymore. We won't be able to offer you Google Maps. That's a bunch of hogwash. These bills do not stop anyone from offering any products or services. All it does is it stops the monopolistic practices that I just described that these big tech juggernauts are doing. And you look at some of the history we've had with legislation, antitrust legislation in this country. At one point, we had to break up AT&T, the phone company. I'm old enough to remember that. I remember back when long distance calling used to cost an arm and a leg. You just never did it. If you knew someone who lived in another state, you called them once a year, tops, because it was just insane to make a long distance phone call. Why? Because AT&T had a monopoly. And by the way, no one saw a problem with it because they just assumed that's the way it was. But finally, we broke them up. And what happened after AT&T broke up? Well, we got a bunch of other services that were able to offer long distance calling at a way freaking cheaper price. Then we got a device called the answering machine. Then we got a device called the modem, which led to the World Wide Web. So when you impose antitrust legislation, it breaks up these monopolies that allow us to flourish as a society. And as we are in the global village, we are in antitrust legislation like this is a no frickin' brainer. To the point where people across the political spectrum, left, right, and even in between, are saying, yeah, we need this. And Chuck Schumer promised a vote next week. We haven't had a vote scheduled yet. So please, folks, please, and shout out to my colleagues at Fight for the Future who I'm helping with this fight. Go to antitrustsummer.com, sign the petition. It takes less than a minute. Big tech giants are violating our rights and undermining our democracy. And because they abuse their monopoly power to stifle competition, many of us don't have other choices. Fortunately, U.S. Congress has finally introduced legislation to put people back in control of tech. Sign this petition. It takes about 40 seconds. And every digital rights organization in the country is for this legislation. Every single one. Who's against this legislation? Well, some politicians that are really bought out by the big tech lobby and the big tech lobby. That's it. That's who's against this legislation. Now, does this legislation solve all of our problems in the digital rights space? Absolutely not. No single piece of legislation would. But this is an attainable win, and this is a huge step in a better direction. Huge. What kind of internet do we want? Do we want the internet that is a democratizing superhighway of information like it was originally supposed to be? What made it cool in the first place? Or do we want it to continue to descend into this capitalist surveillance hellscape that it's descending into? We got to fight back. We got to fight back. Antitrustsummer.com. It literally takes 40 seconds. Antitrustsummer.com. 40 seconds of your time. So please sign this. Sign this. And you know, I mean, I've been talking about this constantly. I've been going on other shows to talk about this. And I'm going to keep pushing this because here's the deal. Here's why it's so time sensitive. If we don't get them to vote on this before recess, here's what's going to happen. Congress is going to go on recess in August, which, you know, they've earned it, folks. They've been working so hard. Please give them the recess that they deserve. What a gig, huh? What a gig. Being in the United States Congress, doing absolutely nothing and getting more vacation time than pretty much anyone else in this country. It's amazing. I think there's some cat hair on my face, by the way. I think Lucy was jumping up on the desk. Whenever Lucy jumps up on the desk, you know, because I'm kind of scratching my face more because I get a little bit of cat hair. Who am I kidding? It was cocaine. No, I'm just kidding. No, it is cat hair. Yeah, she was jumping up here before the show started, which I always love. I love it when she shows up. It's the best. Even if she knocks out the mic cord, I don't care. I'm just so happy to see her, you know. By the way, again, shout out to everyone who wished Lucy a happy birthday last week. And it's still her birthday. I mean, I don't know when exactly her birthday was, you know. So we just celebrate it in June because that's likely when she was born. She was likely born in June. What day in June? I have no clue. So we usually just kind of celebrate it in the middle of the month. You know, that's the safest bet. And she's 16. So gonna give her driver lessons soon. So yeah. Anyway, and let me go ahead, and some of you guys are asking for the website in the chat. I'm gonna put it in both the Rockfin chat, and it's also in the notes, by the way. I'm gonna put it in the Rockfin and YouTube chat, and it's all over the place on Twitter. And it'll be in the podcast notes later. And of course, for everyone listening to the podcast, maybe you're just listening to it audio, antitrustsummer.com. That's it, antitrustsummer.com. No gimmicks, just straight up antitrustsummer.com. Go, please sign the petition. Literally takes less than a minute. It takes less than a minute. And I'm not going to give up this one. I'm going to keep fighting. Along with my colleagues at Fight for the Future, we are going to fight this, and we are going to try to force this vote. You know, I've been making my rounds to try to. Well, let me go to another story first. But that's antitrustsummer.com. And one more thing before we completely move on to another story. Here's something else. Here's another thing. You might be saying, well, Ron, if we force the vote, I don't think that's enough. But we have to also win. Well, here's a report from Reuters. Big tech bill has votes needed to pass, top U.S. antitrust lawmaker says. A top Democratic lawmaker on antitrust issues said Tuesday a bill aimed at reining in the market power of big tech platforms like Amazon and Google, those are these bills we just mentioned, has the votes to pass both chambers of Congress in the next few weeks. Representative David Cicilline, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, chair of the House Antitrust Subcommittee, said, I'm very confident when these bills come to the floor, they will pass convincingly. So they're saying they got the votes. Because they got votes. I mean, look, everyone from Josh Hawley to Bernie Sanders supports these bills. These bills were written by Amy Klobuchar, Chuck Grassley. And by the way, just for the record, Amy Klobuchar and Chuck Grassley have joined forces on different pieces of not antitrust, but different digital rights legislation in the past. And for those of you who remember, we've been critical of it on this show because it hasn't been good legislation. This time, it's actually good legislation. This is good legislation. You guys know me. I go through every piece of policy. before I say, yes, this is good. No, this is not good. This is good. Does it solve everything? Of course not. No single piece of legislation is. But it's a huge, huge step in a better direction. And all of the reasons to be critical of this bill pale in comparison to the benefits that this bill brings. Pales in comparison. So, this bill has the votes. It will likely pass if people do what they say they're going to do. But we have to be loud as hell to A, make sure the vote happens, and B, to make sure people do what they say they're going to frickin' do. Actions speak louder than words. Chuck Schumer promised a vote, but actions speak louder than words. A bunch of people across political aisles say they're for it, but actions speak louder than words. So we got to rally like hell to let them know that we're not going to let them sleep on this. Because here's what they want to do. They want to go on vacation, then come back from vacation and say, hey, we're hyper-focused on the midterms now. We can't possibly think about anything else. And then this bill falls by the wayside. That's what could easily happen if we don't get a vote before they go on recess. So we got to fight like hell to make sure this vote happens. And the best thing you can do, the absolute best thing you can do, is sign a petition that goes right to your representatives. It goes straight to them. You enter your zip code, it goes right to them. And your privacy is protected. These are just digital rights organizations. They don't do anything with that information. All they do is they let you know about important fights that they got coming up. And if you don't want to know about it, just unclick the box. Say, hey, I don't want you to send important information to my inbox. That's fine if you feel that way. That's your right. So please, there is no reason in the world to not sign this petition. Unless you're a lobbyist for big tech. Then I guess don't sign it. But if you're not, sign this frickin' petition, please. It takes less than a minute. And it is the best thing you can do to fight back against this stuff. So I'm begging you. Antitrustsummer.com. All right, let's go to another story here. So you guys might have seen the beach walk I did on this one, going over into labor issues now. Dollar General, where things are not generally a dollar, by the way. Things generally aren't a dollar there. They had a shareholders meeting recently. And guess what they did? They locked their employees out of it. Now, the employees at Dollar General have been protesting for better wages and conditions. They were promised a seat at the table, so they had every right to be at this meeting. A, they are shareholders themselves as employees, and B, they had it clear that they were going to have representation in this meeting. They were shut out from the meeting. Oh, and guess who's been reporting record profits? Dollar General. Because here's why. We're going to go to this video from More Perfect Union in a second, but here's the thing. There's a word for this in economics, like in economics jargon, basically. I forget what the word is, but what it refers to is during tough economic times, which of course we're in, people lean on what I believe they commonly refer to as inferior goods, meaning not your most expensive option. You kind of go for cheap shit, basically, because you have to. So during tough economic times, someone's more likely to buy a Greyhound bus ticket than a flight. They're more likely to ride a bike than drive. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with riding a bike or calling that cheap, but you know what I mean. Maybe cheap shit's not always like the best way to put it. Maybe more economic option, right? And I think it's just inferior, like the theory of inferior goods or something like that. I mean, the charge is not important. What's important is that you know the gist of it. So the reason I bring this up, Dollar General, more people are going to shop at a Dollar General during tough economic times. Some people shop there already, and that's fine. I mean, I don't know much about Dollar General, to tell you the truth. But, places like that, you're more likely to go there than somewhere like even a Target or something like that during tough economic times. Because you're thinking, well, they're saying stuff's generally a dollar, even though it isn't. But, I'm going to show up here and try to get some cheaper price stuff. So their workers showed up during the pandemic, got them through a pandemic, worked in conditions that weren't great, weren't taken care of, I'm sure weren't given adequate pay. So the workers helped get the company these profits because their demand was up. They needed workers to meet that demand. Workers did it, and they're still screwing over the workers. And that's America, baby. That's America. Dollar General is just the latest in an endless list of companies that do this. From John Deere to the Darden restaurant chain, which includes Red Lobster, to Starbucks. By the way, a bunch of other Starbucks stores just voted to unionize today, which is some more good news. So let's go to this video. More Perfect Union really breaks down what happened here. We're going to watch some of it.
So what
Here
do we
go.
Want? When do we want it? Now. Absolutely. So I'm going to go in here and hopefully they hear me out, you guys. But chin up, chest out, we got this.
So those are the workers outside. These are the workers outside the meeting right now. There's the workers outside. They're demanding better pay, better conditions. They're outside of this shareholder meeting that happened recently. Dollar store workers from across the Deep South traveled to their shareholder meeting. This meeting happened in Tennessee.
The shareholders, in the name of Jesus.
So that's an employee knocking on the door saying, we're shareholders. In the name of Jesus, we're shareholders. They are literally physically locked out of the meeting. Let's watch this.
In the name of Jesus. In the name of Jesus. Yes, Lord. Yes. In the name of Jesus. I'm a shareholder. I got a right to be here.
They were denied entry into the May 25th meeting in Goodlettsville, Tennessee.
Gave us proxy to speak at the meetings, and they denied us. So it was totally.
So they had written confirmation that they were set to be at that meeting, and they had every right to be at that meeting. We hereby designate Kenya Slaughter to serve as our proxy. They had it confirmed that they were to have representation inside of that meeting, and they were denied entry.
Unfair. It was a slap in the face, but we know why it happened. They're afraid, and they should be.
Dollar General workers say they are underpaid, understaffed, and undervalued.
Our greatest strength at Dollar General is our people.
I want these shareholders to know exactly what goes on in these stores, and I want them to know just how unhappy and how unfair their employees are treated. And I want them to know that they don't even have a living wage.
92% of Dollar General workers make less than $15 an hour. I'll just go ahead and repeat that. 92% of Dollar General workers make less than $15 an hour. You can't live on $15 an hour anywhere in the United States. You can't. So these workers kept you afloat during a public health crisis. And they're not getting paid a living wage. And that's happening at Target. That's happening at Walmart. That's happening at Dollar General. That's happening everywhere. I mean, pretty much everywhere. There's a few, I know like a place like Costco, they do a little bit better in comparison. Starbucks actually used to be among the better ones, and then they changed. Like I remember there was a point in time where Starbucks was one of the better ones, again, comparably speaking. They changed. Now they're awful. Although that's changing because people are unionizing. I mean, and by the way, folks, they showed us their hand. They showed us their hand during the pandemic. Well, we're still in the pandemic, but during, the thick of it, the lockdown portion, they called people essential workers because they're essential workers. But we're not going to give them, they're essential, but we're not going to give you living wages. You're not going to get enough money to live, but you're essential. So shout out to the workers at Dollar General. Some people have reached out to me. That's Rev Barber who was there. Okay. Is that who it is? Okay, cool. That's awesome. I didn't realize that's who that was in the video. All right. Someone in the chat just said that was Reverend Barber who was in that video. Very cool. It's a cool video. And shout out to More Perfect Union. I really follow them a lot. They do a really great job, curating this beat and covering. Well, they do more than curate it. I guess I kind of curate it. They go there. So shout out to A More Perfect Union. Shout out to Payday Report, Mike Elk, and everyone at Payday Report. Shout out to Status Quo. They do a lot there too. Shout out to everyone who goes to these places and covers what's happening in labor, because it is infinitely important. And guess what? It's not the most clicky stuff. It's not the best stuff for clicks, but it's infinitely important. It's infinitely important. So shout out to them. Go to More Perfect Union to learn more. But yeah, Dollar General, underpaying their workers, undervaluing their workers, and just denying them entry into the meeting. How, man, what a slap. It's like, hey, we're not going to treat you well. We're not going to pay you living wages. And you can't come to this boring ass meeting. We're not even going to give you a seat at the table there. You can't come to our boring as shit meeting. Because screw you. That's why. Dollar General. Where, by the way, stuff's not generally $1. Still not $1. So, man, I mean, and kind of just speaking thematically now, I've really been hitting the pavement, the digital pavement, so to speak, for Antitrust Summer. And I've really been putting a lot into it. And I've really been trying to do as much as I possibly can. And it's just, I've seen a lot of interesting feedback. A lot of it positive, some of it not. And I mean, it's amazing to me. And I hate to kind of highlight some of the bad instead of focusing on the good. But there's certain things that I couldn't help but notice that I think are just so painfully discouraging to recognize that this is the way things are. There are people out there, and by people, I mean, people in a YouTube comment section, so who knows what their deal is or not. But there are people out there who genuinely don't understand the difference between trying to get policy passed, trying to get laws passed, and pressuring elected officials to support good laws. They don't understand the difference between that and supporting someone running for office. They don't understand how those are two different things. They fancy themselves politically astute. They don't understand the difference between those two things. They honestly just don't get it. And I'm sorry, that's frightening. Frightening is the only word to describe that. Somebody called me because I'm pursuing this, this campaign. Somebody said I was sheepdogging for the DNC, which makes no sense. This bill has nothing to do with the DNC. It was written by a Democrat and a Republican. It has nothing to do with electing anybody. It's a law. It's a policy. You're pushing them. And by the way, if anything, most of the people who are against this bill are Democrats in Colorado and Silicon Valley, Michael Bennet, Dianne Feinstein. These are DNC lackeys. If anything, it's the opposite. If anything, the DNC is an entity that doesn't want to see these bills get passed. So if anything, it is completely the opposite. So it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. People don't understand how those are two different things. And I get it that it's very, very tempting to just sort of throw up your arms and say, screw it. But I can tell you, that's exactly what they want. If you're just going to throw up your arms and say, well, screw it, they're all corrupt, which they are. Our system's whack, which it is. We live in an oligarchy, which we do. But if you just throw your arms up and say, well, then screw it, I'm just not going to even try to get better legislation passed. I'm not going to try to do anything. That's giving them exactly what they want. And I've seen a lot of that. I don't know if black pill is the right term for that. I don't stay hip on the jargon, to tell you the truth. But I know I some people have referred that to be black pilled or whatever, where you're just like, you just don't think anything will work. I'm not going to call it nihilistic because, by the way, I know that's the new word in like the kind of indie media space. That's the new word that everybody uses to describe somebody they disagree with, and nobody uses it properly. Nihilism. That's the new one. For a long time, it was grifter. Grifter had a hell of a run. And by the way, to everyone watching, everyone's a grifter but you. But grifter, long run. I thought grifter was never going to end. That was the word of the day. Anyone you have a problem with is a grifter. Doesn't mean grifters aren't out there. Of course they are. But everyone is everyone's a grifter but you. And that was the word. Now it's nihilist. Everyone's a nihilist. What's a nihilist? You don't even know. You don't know. But that's the word that everyone's using now. They describe everything as nihilist, which, by the way, you're a nihilist if you kind of have no reference for anything. You have nothing is sacred. So you're not a nihilist, when you put certain YouTube shows on a pedestal. You're not a nihilist when you put certain politicians on a pedestal. You might be wrong, and well, you are wrong, but you're not a nihilist. You can't just I know that we live in a world where people will just make up what words mean. Like we just kind of make shit up and then we use it enough so it just becomes its own thing. But I'll be damned if I'm going to say it's not really freaking annoying. Right-wing populism isn't a thing, all right? I don't give a shit how much people try to use it. It's not real. It's fake. That's the only time. The only time you should mention right-wing populism is when you're saying it's not a thing. It's not real. Read The People Know by Thomas Frank, which talks about what populism actually is. Populism is a movement that is for the betterment of the working class and the betterment of people. Right-wing is what benefits the corporation. So there's no such thing as right-wing populism. You could say somebody has socially conservative views and they're also for populism because they're part of the working class. But that doesn't make right-wing populism a thing. That's just a person who has a mix of views. Like they're for working class issues, but they're, whatever. You can't just make shit up like right-wing politics. So, anyway, I know it's, and I'm not trying to sound like any type of idealist because I'm not. I don't sugarcoat anything. I sugarcoat nothing. But I'm also the first person to say, if you just give up and you just throw in the towel and you just you're giving them exactly what they want. Whether it comes to pushing for policy, whether it comes to striking, whether it comes to protesting, or even voting. Look, when it comes to electoralism, y'all know where I stand. I have little to no interest. Of course, when I say electoralism, that's actually what I mean. Getting candidates elected. That's what electoralism means. You can't just call something electoralism when that's not what it is. People do it anyway. But I guess I'm this crazy person who thinks that words actually matter and thinks that maybe it's time we stop making shit up and then just saying it with conviction. But yeah. Anyway, you know where I stand when it comes to electoralism. Of course, I feel differently locally than I do federally. I have more stock in local electoralism. Why? Because there's more transparency. It's your community. And in local politics, you really do have the choice to get someone in who wants to serve your community or someone in who wants to exploit it. I'm not saying it's always that simple. I'm not saying there's not corruption. Of course there is. But compared to federal, it's way freaking better. And honestly, you get better people running. Look at what happened in Los Angeles. We have multiple labor organizers who have taken leads in their districts. That's huge. That is huge. 3 different districts in Los Angeles. The progressives have taken the lead in the runoff or in the primary, and they're definitely going to be in the runoff. Kenneth Mejia made it through for controller. And in my district, Brian Odega, unfortunately, did not make the runoff. But guess what? The people who did, they have to come to Bryant and the movement that he helped form. And they have to get our votes. And they frickin' know it. So, anyway, I know people, they say, well, I don't vote. I don't even vote locally because I won't participate. It's such a corrupt system. But it's like, okay, you're giving them exactly what they want, though. By not showing up, like that's just the best thing they could ask for. If there is a ballot initiative to get a public bank in California and you don't show up to vote for it out of some principle, you're giving the powers that be exactly what they want, because public banks would greatly help communities in this country, and the powers that be sure as hell don't want that to happen. If somebody in your neighborhood gets municipal broadband on the ballot and can get the money for it, and you don't show up to vote on it, you're giving big cable exactly what they frickin' want. If there's an actual decent candidate running for city council and you can't even bother filling in a bubble on a box for him, well, you're giving those real estate developers exactly what they frickin' want. But Ron, if nobody shows up to vote, the system will have to change. Will it? You know, the average turnout for local elections throughout the country is 27%. 27%. You think they give a shit? You think the powerful people who run cities all over this country give a shit? No, they don't. They're actually hoping that you never catch on. They're hoping that you never show up so they can just keep making a playground for their developer asshole friends. That's what they want. They'd love it if that 27% was even freaking lower. And they'd love it if federally that was even lower too. Because if there's an initiative in your state for ranked choice voting and you don't show up, you're giving the powers that be exactly what they want. And if there's a policy out there that's actually good legislation that big tech doesn't want, and big tech has the ear of all the politicians in this country, but those politicians know that this antitrust legislation is overwhelmingly popular and everyone's paying attention and everyone's rallying at them to sign this into law, to put this up for a vote and to vote this into law. And if they do it, it will be overwhelmingly popular with people and they want to keep their job. Well, they're going to act on it. But if no one signs that petition, if no one lets them know, if everyone's quiet, they're just going to be, well, I'm just going to do what these lobbyists want me to do. Because I'm going to keep my job no matter what, because no one's paying attention. You think laws pass in this country because politicians feel like being nice? Are you nuts? I know. Maybe you like some of their Instagram feeds. Good for you. That's nice to have a hero in electoral politics. How freaking sad is that? How sad. It's so sad to have a hero in general. You have a hero and it's someone you've never met. That's pathetic. But to have a hero in electoral politics, one of the dirtiest profession that I know of in this freaking country. It's coming from someone in show business, by the way. Show business looks like a freaking charity compared to our electoral politics. I've had peeks under the hood that I've never wanted to have, and it is gross beyond gross, and it is a freaking horror show. And these are your heroes? Fuck off. So, anyway, as you can tell, I've been, as you can tell, I've been really embraced in this this campaign, and I've been a little disappointed. I've been a little disappointed with some of the things I've seen over on the interwebs. So, anyway, so all I'm saying is, look, it's really easy to just throw up your hands. And, here's the thing, and I've noticed this a lot, especially in the kind of YouTuber space, whatever you want to call it. Now, I'll be honest with you guys, I don't consider myself part of that space. I go on people's shows and stuff like that, but I don't really consider myself a quote YouTuber per se. You guys know I don't spend any time babbling about other YouTubers because I have no interest in it because I don't care. I know that there's some who allegedly have even said shit about me. I don't even know about a lot of it. I don't care. I talk about issues I want to talk about, and that's all I do. And the reason I do that is because I have other things that are part of my creative quilt. I write scripts. I write for other shows. I do stand up. So I'm not one of these people where it's like, "Oh, well, I have to have this clickbaity, like, oh, so and so dunked on so and so thing because this is what I do. I don't have to do any of that. And I have no interest in doing any of that. So instead, I talk about exactly what I want to talk about. And if people like it and people think it's important, they tune in. If they don't and they don't think it's important, they don't tune in. And, as long as there's people tuning in who find this valuable, that's all that matters to me. I'd rather have like 5 people who give a shit, who say, "Hey, I'm fighting for municipal broadband in my neighborhood because of Ron. I'm into net neutrality. I'm into the antitrust summer. I've signed the petition. I've told all my friends and family." I'd rather have 5 of those people than hundreds of people who are just looking for TMZ style bullshit. And that's half the stuff you see anymore. It's TMZ-esque bullshit. I mean, half the stuff I see coming, I just look at it and I'm just like, who the fuck cares? And by the way, there's a lot of people out there who use the buzzwords really well. They use the free speech, which, by the way, is very important. But they'll use the tech censorship, big tech, free speech, all important issues. But there's people who use the buzzwords really freaking well. But then when it comes time to fight back and there's actually things to fight back with, that's not as good for clicks. That's not as sexy. So you hear radio silence. And I'm sorry, folks, it gets really freaking frustrating. As someone who has been paying attention to digital rights since 2004, who's been on this beat since 2004, who has been showing up to things, and this was back before anyone had a clue who I was. I was just an anonymous road comic, who had a podcast about this stuff. I mean, I'm still pretty freaking anonymous, quite frankly. I'm just slightly less anonymous than I was then. But it's so frustrating to see people saying the buzzwords that are like, well, here's something we could do, radio silence. Or worse, they can't even be bothered. And, the other side of that, a ton of people have come through for Antitrust Summer. So, and the good outweighs the bad by a lot, by an awful lot. So I'm kind of just harping on like a very small percentage, and I understand that. But what I'm saying is I'm so sick of losing. I'm so sick of losing. We're all sick of losing. So let's at least get on board with the stuff we have control over. And one of the things you have control over is your ability to either give a fuck or not give a fuck. And if you don't give a fuck, well, then just get out of the way. But if you do give a fuck, God, take 40 seconds and sign a damn petition. Or do something. Because it's really easy to find the holes in everything. It's really easy. If you're looking to find the holes in the Green Party, you'll find them. There's stuff about the Green Party that's, by the way, worthy of criticism. There's plenty of stuff the Green Party has done that's pissed me off. There's plenty of good things the Green Party has done too. Same with PSL. Same with any other organization. Same with any climate organization. There's going to be people who you find off-putting. There's going to be personalities who you find off-putting. There's going to be people who make mistakes, including me, by the way. I've made tons of mistakes. I'll make a ton more. To quote Noam Chomsky, I've been wrong in the past. I'll be wrong in the future. That's called being human. But, it's up to us whether we actually frickin' do something or not. So, by the way, I'm begging you, antitrustsummer.com. Antitrustfrickinsummer.com. And I know I know that you guys never get notified. I mean, some of you guys are pointing out, yeah, we never get notified when you're on when you're on YouTube. I know. Yeah, YouTube does not promote. And by the way, that's how these bills also drift into content creators. While this bill does not address something like censorship directly, when you break up these entities like Google, it makes us all less dependent on these guys. So the fact that there are other content creators who are either ignoring this or at worst are shitting on it, it blows my freaking mind. And by the way, this wouldn't be the first time this happened. I've explained on this show how blowing a hole in Section 230 would be a terrible idea. I've explained how some of these bills out there were going to lead to mass demonetization. And guess what happened? It did. It freaking did. And there were creators who were still for blowing a hole in Section 230. Probably because they didn't read it. Hey. Oh, some of you guys are saying you did get a notice today. Holy shit. That's awesome. I appreciate that. Come to Gainesville, Florida again so I can. Oh, man. I got to say that Gainesville is my personal favorite town in Florida. No offense to the rest of Florida, although you guys, man, you guys got a lot going on, huh? But I love Gainesville. That's a really cool town, and I would like to go back there. I know that we canceled all the Florida dates, but Gainesville, yeah, I wouldn't mind doing Fest, to tell you the truth. I'd love to do Fest. I've not been invited, but if you are going to Fest, especially if you're in Gainesville, you can request me. That'd be cool. If you say, hey, I request Ron Placone at Fest. That'd be groovy. Anyway, speaking of which, tour dates, I got them. Reykjavik, Iceland. What are you doing at the end of the month? I'm going to be part of the Reykjavik Fringe Festival. My shows are on June 28th and June 30th. I'm really looking forward to that festival. I'm going to be there the whole fest. Go to ronplacone.com for tickets. That's ronplacone.com. You can get tickets to my show directly from the festival itself. My shows are June 28th and June 30th in Reykjavik. Pacific Northwest, Graham Elwood and I are coming at the end of July. July 28th, Portland, Oregon. July 29th, Seattle, Washington. July 30th, Vancouver, British Columbia. Get tickets now at ronplacone.com. That's ronplacone.com. Myself and Graham Elwood, Portland, Seattle, Vancouver. We can't wait to see you. And that's going to be the end of my touring for the most part for 2022. Unless something crazy happens before the end of the year, I will be done touring at the end of July. So Portland, Seattle, Vancouver, Reykjavik, Iceland. That's what I got left on the books. And then next year, I'm probably going to be prioritizing the Midwest. And I'm doing house shows again, by the way. So if your city's not on my list, hit me up. I'm doing house shows. So hit me up and we can make something happen. My success rate with house shows is 100% so far. I'm proud to report that. Sometimes you never know what's going to happen at a house show. There have been times where everyone's getting kind of hammered and you're kind of thinking, is the show even going to happen? But then it does. And it's a lot of fun. The setups have been, pretty solid. I've had great shows in San Antonio, Texas, Richmond, Virginia, Galena, Illinois. It's been awesome. So hit me up for a house show, ronplacone.com, and we'll see if we can make that happen. Either, likely in 2023. I mean, I think I'm going to kickstart that more in 2023. And yeah. And then I'll be coming to the UK in 2023 too, if all goes as planned. My tentative plan for next year is Midwest domestically and UK internationally. So anyway, if you want to support this show on the sustainability end, patreon.com/RobLacone. For a give what you can level, you get all kinds of exclusive content. I'll make you a theme song and you get to see my mini pilot loaner. It's not out for everyone yet. I haven't dropped it publicly, but it is out for patrons. You can watch it now. It's a comedy. So my mini pilot, which basically means a pilot that is shorter in nature. It's not most TV episodes are like 20 to 30 minutes. This episode is 12 minutes. And, they're doing like mini series on Netflix and HBO. And this series follows a guy through quarantine. The first episode takes place on March 23rd, 2020. And he's going through the lockdown with the knowledge that he could have invested in Zoom, their version of Zoom in this fantasy world. It's called Vroom in the show, but it's basically Zoom. He could have invested in Zoom, but he didn't. So he has to go through the pandemic knowing he could be a millionaire right now. And here's the other rub. Zoom was invented by his ex-girlfriend. So she asked him to invest in it. He said no. He could be a millionaire, but he's not. And he's locked in an apartment all alone with nobody but his cat. And of course, Lucy plays herself in the series. The cat's name is Lucy, and Lucy plays the cat, obviously. But it's a comedy. It's fun. And of course, it has a total anti-capitalist undertone, like everything I do. But yeah, you can watch it now for as low as $1 a month. And that'll help me make more scripted content. For as low as $1 a month, you can support everything I'm doing. And I also post all of my content on Patreon too. If you're thinking, gee, Ron, I don't get notifications on YouTube. It's hard to keep track of all the beach walks and all the podcasts and all the writings and everything. Patreon.com/Ron Placone. You get everything there. I don't just post my patrons only content. I post everything. So it's an easy one-stop shop to just get all my stuff. And you also get stand-up clips not available anywhere else, blah, blah, blah. You get the idea. Patreon.com/Ron Placone. Guys, we will be back. So I'm going to do the next episode of Expatriate very soon before I leave for Iceland. Then, of course, while I'm in Iceland, this show will be on hiatus. We might only have 1 or 2 more full-length episodes before I leave, but I'll be making a formal announcement at the next episode of Expatriate. We might still have 1 more episode here, especially with Antitrust Summer still going on. But the full-length shows will be on hiatus when I'll be in Iceland. I'll still be coming at you with some short content. I'll be documenting the festival. I'll be doing all kinds of patron vlogs and stuff like that too. But the full-length podcasts and streams will be on hiatus while I'll be in Iceland, and then we'll get back in when I come back. But I'll be announcing those dates, before basically by the beginning of next week at the latest. So we will see you again shortly. And by the way, the next episode of Expatriate is going to be about digital nomad visas. That was decided via a Twitter poll. So I'll see you soon. And in the meantime, you know the drill. Lucy, she says meow, and I say peace. Peace.